Picture this. You're sitting in a movie theater. The Marvel logo flashes on the screen. The film begins. Eternals, one of the most ambitious projects in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, directed by an Academy Award-winning filmmaker. And then, in the middle of the film, aboard a private jet belonging to an immortal being who has lived for thousands of years, you hear it. Not a rock anthem, not a sweeping orchestral score, a K-pop song. Soft, warm, and achingly sincere, written, composed, and produced by a young man from Busan, South Korea. His name is ParkJimin. And that moment, without most people even realizing it, was one of the most significant turning points in Jimin's journey as an artist. Because when one of the most powerful directors in Hollywood chooses your work, not for marketing, not for strategy, but because she genuinely loves it, that tells you everything you need to know about what kind of artist you are. So today, we're going to talk about that decision. We're going to talk about why Chloé Zhao chose Jimin. And we're going to talk about why that choice changed everything, not just for Jimin, but for the way the world sees K-pop as a serious art form. Before we get to the Marvel Theater, before we get to Chloé Zhao and her Academy Award and her tears in the editing room, we need to go back. We need to talk about who ParkJimin actually is, because understanding the artist helps you understand why a filmmaker of her caliber would even look in his direction. ParkJimin was born on October 13, 1995, in Busan, a port city in the south of South Korea that is rough around the edges and full of character. From an early age, Jimin wasn't a child who sat still. He danced. He moved in a way that is difficult to describe but easy to feel. There was something in the way he occupied space that made it impossible to look away. At Busan High School of Arts, he entered as the top student in the contemporary dance department. That wasn't luck. That was the result of work that started long before anyone knew his name. And then he moved to Seoul, enrolled at Korea Arts High School, and that's where he met a boy named Kim Taehyung, who the world would later know as V of BTS. The friendship between Jimin and V is not a PR narrative. It is not fan fiction. It is one of the most quietly documented real friendships in the entertainment industry. These two boys were strangers in a big city, both far from home, both chasing something that most people around them said was impossible. They slept in the same dormitory, ate at the same table, dreamed in the same room. They trained until their feet blistered, until their voices broke, until their bodies asked for rest, and their minds refused to listen. And from all of that shared experience, from all the memories folded between two people who grew up together in the most intense years of their lives, a song was born. Friends. Written, composed, and produced by Jimin himself. Released in February 2020 as a B-side track on BTS's fourth studio album, Map of the Soul. 7. The song is not about romantic love. It's not about ambition or heartbreak or fame. It is a song about the most honest kind of friendship imaginable. Two people who know each other's weaknesses, who have argued and reconciled, who choose each other every single day. The lyrics reference soulmate, not in the romantic sense, but in something far deeper, someone who stays even when the applause fades and the stage lights go dark. And Chloé Zhao heard that song. Now, before we talk about her decision, it is important to understand who Chloé Zhao is. Because this is not a small name in cinema. Zhao is the director of Nomadland, the film that won the Palme d'Or equivalent at the Venice Film Festival, 3 Academy Awards including Best Picture and Best Director, and the Golden Globe for Best Drama. She was the second Asian woman ever nominated for the Best Director Oscar, and the first to win it. When Marvel chose her to direct Eternals, that was not a casual decision. That was Marvel signaling that they wanted something different, artistic depth, narrative courage, and the willingness to push beyond the limits of genre. Zhao brought all of that to Eternals. The film she made is not simply a superhero movie. It is a meditation on time, on identity, on what it means to love something for thousands of years and still be unable to save it. And to support that cinematic vision, she curated her soundtrack with extraordinary care. She wasn't picking names for commercial appeal. She chose Pink Floyd. She chose Lizzo. She chose Merle Haggard. She chose Carl Perkins. And she chose BTS. Specifically, the song Friends by Jimin and V. In an interview with E! Today after the film released, Zhao spoke directly about her decision. And her reasons were simple, but devastating in their clarity. She said Friends was her favorite BTS song, that she really liked Jimin, that the song was beautiful, and that every song on the Eternals soundtrack, from Pink Floyd to Baroque compositions, was a song she personally loved. This was not a corporate decision. It was not a marketing strategy designed to capture the Asian market. This was the choice of a filmmaker who fell in love with a piece of art and decided to bring it to the largest screen in the world. But there is a deeper layer here beyond Zhao's personal taste. She also explained why Friends was thematically right for Eternals. The film is about a group of immortal beings who have lived together for thousands of years, who have fought, separated, reunited, and continued to love each other across time that no human mind can truly comprehend. And Friends, a song about Jimin and V growing up together since high school, who knew each other at the most fragile and most honest moments of their lives, carries the exact same emotional energy. A friendship that survives not because it is easy, but because it is chosen every single day. Zhao saw that, and that is why her decision was not merely editorial or artistic. It was an act of profound emotional intelligence. She recognized that a song written by a 20-something from South Korea contained something universal. Something that could sit beside Pink Floyd. Something that could live inside a story about beings who have existed for millions of years without feeling out of place. When the confirmation first broke in October 2021, when Walt Disney Company Korea officially announced that Friends by BTS would be included in the Eternals soundtrack, the reaction from ARMY around the world was seismic. Hashtags like Producer Jimin and VMIN trended in dozens of countries simultaneously. Thousands of fans photographed Jimin's name in the rolling end credits of Eternals and uploaded them to social media with captions full of pride and emotion. Because this was not just a song being played in a movie theater. This was a global acknowledgement from the largest film franchise in the world that Jimin's work he wrote himself, composed himself, produced himself, deserved to stand alongside the legends. And here is the detail that most people overlook when they talk about this moment. Everyone focuses on the fact that BTS made it into Marvel. Everyone focuses on the sweet friendship between Jimin and V. But what often gets missed is one small fact that is actually enormous. Friends is not just a song Jimin performed. It is a song he wrote, a song he composed, a song he produced. Every melody you hear, every harmony that feels warm against your ears, every word choice that makes your chest feel full, all of that came from the mind and heart of ParkJimin, poured into a form that an Oscar-winning director then chose to represent the central theme of her film. This is not a coincidence, and it is not the first time the world outside K-pop has recognized something extraordinary in Jimin. We need to talk about Gus Van Sant. If you are not familiar with the name, here is a brief introduction. Gus Van Sant is one of the most celebrated directors in American cinema. Good Will Hunting, the film that made Robin Williams and Matt Damon household names, the film that won 2 Academy Awards and made a generation cry in theaters. My Own Private Idaho, a film still studied in film schools around the world for its structural and emotional daring. Gus Van Sant is not a man who speaks carelessly. He does not give compliments out of politeness. And when he was asked in an interview who he would most want to photograph as a subject, whose image he wanted to capture with his lens, he said one name: Jimin. Not because Jimin was the biggest K-pop star in the world, but because Van Sant said something that is very difficult to forget, that he likes to photograph people who have peace inside them. And that Jimin is like that. A director who has pointed his camera at Robin Williams, Uma Thurman, and River Phoenix, choosing Jimin not because of a trend, not because of a viral moment, but because he saw genuine human quality in a young man from South Korea. And then there is Jared Bush, co-director of Zootopia, the animated film that won the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature Film in 2017. A filmmaker who builds complex imaginary worlds full of layered detail and emotional nuance. Jared Bush also sent his love call to Jimin. A filmmaker who thinks in texture and depth saw something in Jimin worth celebrating, not just as a performer, but as a human being with genuine artistic depth. Think about what it takes for a moment like that to happen. Jared Bush spends his professional life inside imaginary worlds, building cities populated by animals who dream, who fear, who love. The entire craft of animation is about making the invisible visible, turning an emotion into something you can see and hear on a screen. And when a man whose entire career is built on that kind of emotional precision looks at a real human being and says there is something here worth capturing, that is not a casual compliment. That is a professional assessment from someone who has spent decades learning how to see. And here is something that ARMY knows deeply but the wider world often misses. Jimin himself is acutely aware of what his art means to other people. He has spoken in interviews about the pressure he feels not just to perform, but to communicate something true. During the preparation for Arirang, he described the experience of returning to the group after years apart, after military service, after time spent alone with his own thoughts, as something that fundamentally changed the way he approaches music. He said the time away helped him understand more clearly what he actually wants to say. Not what the industry expects him to say. Not what a streaming algorithm rewards. But what is genuinely alive inside him and needs to come out. That kind of self-awareness, that combination of technical mastery and emotional honesty, is precisely what filmmakers like Zhao, Vincent, and Bush are responding to. They are not reacting to his fame. They are reacting to the thing underneath the fame. The real artist. The one who writes a song about his best friend because the feeling is too large to keep inside. If you think all of this is coincidence, that these world-class directors are simply following a K-pop trend, consider the pattern more carefully. Every single person who speaks about Jimin in this way, from Chloé Zhao who chose his song for Marvel, to Gus Van Sant who wants to photograph him, to Jared Bush who reached out, none of them are talking about Jimin as a member of BTS. They are talking about Jimin as an individual, as an artist, as a human being. That distinction matters enormously. In the entertainment industry, it is very easy to disappear behind a group identity. Many K-pop artists are known primarily as members of a particular group, and their individual personas are submerged beneath collective branding. But Jimin, somehow, in a way that is hard to explain but easy to feel, has always managed to be present as himself even within the context of the group. There is something in the way he performs on stage, in the way he speaks in interviews, in the way he writes songs, that makes it impossible not to see him as a complete and complex individual. And Friends is one of the most concrete proofs of that. The song is not a formula product. It was not the result of a creative process engineered to produce a chart hit. It is a song born from real memory, from actual recollections of sleeping in the same dormitory, of small arguments that never lasted long, of laughter that can only exist between two people who know each other completely. And that authenticity is felt, even by someone like Chloé Zhao, whose entire life is filled with the best works of art from around the world. There is something deeply symbolic about how Friends plays inside Eternals. The song is heard aboard the private jet of Kingo, an Eternal who has chosen to live among humans as a Bollywood movie star, who loves life and beauty and human connection in a way that sometimes feels deeper than his fellow immortals. And on that plane, among beings carrying the weight of thousands of years of memory and loss, the song about the friendship between Jimin and V plays gently. There is a beautiful irony there, that among all the music from all the eras Zhao could have chosen, she picked a song by two young men just beginning their lives, to accompany beings who have lived for millions of years. That is a brilliant directorial choice. And it is an implicit acknowledgement that Friends contains something truly universal, something that transcends language, culture, and time. Now in 2026, with BTS having just made their triumphant comeback with the album Arirang, shattering records on the Billboard Hot 100, selling over 641,000 album units in a single week, filling Gwangwamun Square with 260,000 fans, it is worth stepping back and seeing this whole journey in a wider frame. Jimin has already proven himself as a solo artist. Like Crazy became the first song by a Korean solo artist to debut at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. He has proven himself as a performer with stages that have left audiences across the world speechless. He has proven himself as a songwriter and producer with Friends, and now returns with writing credits on the Arirang album as well. But among all those achievements, there is one that people keep returning to when they talk about Jimin's artistic legacy. The fact that a song he wrote himself, from the most honest place inside him, without commercial agenda, without any calculation about charts or streams, was chosen by one of the most respected directors in the world to represent the emotional heart of the biggest film franchise ever made. Chloé Zhao did not choose Friends because BTS was popular. She chose it because it was beautiful, because it was honest, because among all the music in the world, Friends was the song that most perfectly captured what she wanted to say about relationships that endure across time. And that More than any chart record, more than any award, more than any streaming number, is the true definition of an artist who has made a real difference. Jimin wrote a song about his friend, about their shared memories, about the hope that their friendship would last longer than 7 summers and cold winters. And without planning it, without predicting it, that song traveled further than he could ever have imagined into theaters across the world, into the ears of millions of viewers who had never heard the name ParkJimin, who had no idea what BTS was, who simply sat in their seats and felt something warm spreading through their chests without being able to explain why. That is the true power of music, and that is why Chloé Zhao's decision was not just an editorial or artistic choice. It was a recognition that beyond all the labels and categories and genres, there is art that speaks directly to human beings. And Jimin, ParkJimin from Busan, is someone who creates that kind of art. From the theater that played Eternals in 2021, to the stadiums that will be filled by ARMY all around the world on the Arirang World Tour in 2026 and beyond, this journey is long, and it is far from over. But every time someone asks what makes Jimin different, what makes world-class filmmakers see something extraordinary in him, the simplest and most honest answer is this: he writes from the most real place inside himself. And truth always finds its way, even to the biggest Marvel screen in the world. If this story moved you, if it made you see Jimin in a different light, or if it gave you something to think about, hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps this channel grow and helps more ARMY find content like this. And if you're new here, subscribe and hit the bell, because we cover stories about BTS and Jimin that go deeper than the headlines every single week. Drop a comment below. Did you know about Friends being in Eternals? And if you heard it in the theater without knowing it was Jimin's song, what did you feel in that moment? I want to know. I'll see you in the next one. Always ARMY.